Hey guys, and welcome back. For today's video, going to be taking a look at 5 polls that have come out over the past couple of days. 2 of them looking at the national picture of the 2020 Democratic primary, and then also 3 state-specific results looking at Ohio, Arizona, as well as California. And in general, with the numbers that we've been getting out over the past couple of days, extremely positive for Senator Elizabeth Warren, and we'll get into that as we dive into those numbers. Also, some pretty bad signs overall for Joe Biden, who not all that long ago was consistently coming in first place and by rather significant margins in a lot of cases. But in a lot of the polls that we're getting now, he's either seeing his lead shrink or he's ending up in second or even third place in some of these different results. So first, starting off with the Economist Yougov poll that was taken between September 28 and October 1st of 2019, and we can see that Elizabeth Warren leading the pack at 26% support, followed by Joe Biden in second place at 22%, and Bernie Sanders at 14%. And then in the single digits, we have Pete Buttigieg at 7%, Kamala Harris at 5%, Andrew Yang and Beto O'Rourke each at 3 percentage points, respectively, and then they go down from that point. Now going over and taking a look at this month's Monmouth national poll, and another very strong indicator from Elizabeth Warren, where she's up 8 points from where she was just a month ago back in August, up to 28% support in first place. She was at 20 percentage points, and then you follow that with Joe Biden at 25%, Bernie Sanders at 15%, Pete Buttigieg and Kamala Harris each at 5 percentage points, respectively, in that national poll. And also with some of these national polls that we're getting, it's looking like Pete Buttigieg might even be taking a little bit of a step above Kamala Harris with how the Harris campaign has really taken a backslide in recent months. She's completely fallen off the map, it feels, and it seems like a lot of that Kamala Harris support has shifted over behind Elizabeth Warren, and probably part of the reason why Warren is getting the boost that we've seen from her over the past couple of months when we've seen that decline from Senator Harris. Now I want to go over and take a look at those 3 state-specific results. First, an Emerson poll taking a look at the state of Ohio, and here's one where Biden is in first place, but it is extremely competitive and well within the margin of error. This is a Rust Belt state, one where you'd figure voters might get behind candidates such as a Biden and a Sanders, for instance, and that's what we're seeing in this particular poll, with Biden in first place at 29%, Bernie Sanders at 27% in second place, Elizabeth Warren at 21 percentage points. And it's important to note that these state-specific results, you have to get above 15% of the vote to be part of the candidates that get divvied up, those pledged delegates. If you don't get above that particular margin, then you won't get any pledged delegates from that particular caucus or primary. And it's not that simple. It's not a statewide 15%. It goes, I believe, down to congressional districts. But outside of that, it is an important number to keep in mind, and a threshold that you're wanting to look at statewide to at least get above that notch, so that you know you're probably going to be a part of those candidates that get pledged delegates, divvying up proportionally in terms of your support. So also some other interesting numbers out of Ohio, where Bernie Sanders continues to dominate the younger voter demographic under 30 years old. He's getting 52% of that vote, where he's only getting 4% above 65, or the age of 65, in the state of Ohio. And it's the exact opposite for Biden, where he's getting 49% of voters over 65 and only 3% among those voters that are under the age of 30, which is really something interesting in the dynamic that we have in this Democratic primary, in the vast differences between the different age demographics. Then we see the head-to-head in Ohio among these upper-tier 2020 Democratic hopefuls in Trump, and then also interesting that they throw Pence in the mix for this one. We see Sanders with a 6-point lead over Trump, Biden with a 6-point lead over Trump, Warren with a 4-point lead over Trump in the state of Ohio, and then also the candidates having leads over Pence, but kind of interesting how these numbers change a little bit, where Biden is a little bit stronger head-to-head against Pence with an 8% compared to the 6% difference between him and Trump, in that difference between him and Pence. But then Sanders and Warren doing a little bit worse in their head-to-head against Pence than what they were doing against Trump, where Sanders and Warren each ahead of Pence by 2 percentage points, respectively, in those head-to-head matchups. Now moving over and taking a look at the state of California, where we see Elizabeth Warren in first place, but extremely close among the top three candidates, where you have Elizabeth Warren at 23% of support, Joe Biden at 22%, in second place, Bernie Sanders at 21% in third place, all within the margin of error, and essentially a three-way tie for first place when you bring in that margin of error into consideration, and a really bad sign for the California Senator Kamala Harris at just 8%. Basically, Harris, if we're going into California and she's not even getting up to that 15% number where you're divvying up those pledged delegates, that basically would be the end of her candidacy if it shapes out to be that situation for Senator Harris. Now moving over and taking a look at the last state-specific poll that I wanted to touch on here. This one also just coming out, and it's from the state of Arizona. Change Research, and in terms of a generic Democrat versus Donald Trump, actually has a 1-point lead in the state of Arizona. Of course, it was a pretty close race back in 2016, Clinton coming up short against Trump by about 3.5 percentage points, and we see the generic Democratic candidate in this poll having a 1-point lead over Donald Trump in what's likely to be a toss-up state going into 2020. But also very interesting in this Democratic primary, just one poll and, relatively small sample size, but not out of the realm of reasonability for a state-specific poll of 396 Democrats. Elizabeth Warren running away in first place at 35% support, and then in Bernie Sanders' case, second place at 19%, Joe Biden at just 15% falling down to third place. I would think that Joe Biden would do decent in a state like Arizona because Biden tends to do well with those older voter demographics, and you have a lot of older-aged Democratic voters in the state of Arizona. So I'm not totally bought in necessarily on this particular result. I'd like to see some more data out of the state of Arizona, but at least in this one, a very positive sign for Elizabeth Warren out there in first place at 35%. And we actually saw this in a lot of these polls where Elizabeth Warren is ending up in first place. That was the case in the two national polls that we took a look at. Also, she had just a slight lead in that California poll, and the Ohio poll was the only one where she wasn't in first place in the 5 different polls that I wanted to touch on for today. And if you're interested in looking at all of the different data from the polls that I touched on in this video, I'll have them linked down in the video description. I appreciate you guys stopping on in. Consider subscribing for more, and I hope to see you guys back here for my next video.